Lord of the Mysteries. Chapter 536. Local Faith. What? Hunt Admiral of Blood? Danitz almost raised his right hand to his ear. His first reaction was that he had misheard. However, Gehrman Sparrow's smile with hidden madness and the slight movement of his captain's eyebrows, an abnormality of hers, reminded him that what was said had really happened. This man Gehrman Sparrow really is daring. This is one of the 7 pirate admirals. They aren't people that a character like Steele Mavady can be compared with. Danitz's pupils shrank, his heart on the brink of roaring. Putting aside the fact that Admiral of Blood Senor's own might, just the pirates underneath him are intimidating enough. His first mate, third mate, and the captains of each ship are all capable of independently leading a large pirate crew. There are still many of the crew which Steele Mavady had brought to Byam with him in the Blood Pirate crew. When Vice Admiral Hurricane Kalangos died silently like a wild dog in Backland, it was mainly because he wasn't with his pirate crew. However, Admiral of Blood Senor is different. He seldom leaves his flagship and rarely leaves the company of his men. Even if the focus is placed back on Senor's strength, it would still be extremely terrifying. He's mysterious, bizarre, and is one of the few powerhouses at the sea who is second only to the 4 kings. Even Captain might not dare to claim to be his superior. A madman's guts really does exceed my imagination. No, he doesn't know the meaning of fear at all. The death and replacement of a pirate admiral will definitely be a great shock to the 5 seas. One thought after another flashed through Danitz's mind, but in the end, he strangely calmed down. It was because he recalled that Gehrman Sparrow was a powerhouse at the level of the 7 admirals, and there might be a hidden, terrifying organization backing him. Edwina said after a few seconds of silence, "Do you know of the Rose School of Thought?" "Not only do I know them, I've also killed their people and taken their mystical items." "Wait a minute, why do I have to describe myself as a bad guy?" Klein converged his smile and said in an unperturbed manner, "I've hunted their members." Edwina fell silent again. Next to her, Danitz once again had various thoughts. What are they talking about? What's the Rose School of Thought? Where am I? Whose dream is this? After a short moment of silence, Edwina said, "After the huge battle with Vice Admiral Dusk's pirate crew, Senor's crew vanished. At present, no one knows where they are. One will have to wait patiently." "Is this an agreement?" Klein once again revealed a smile. "I do not lack patience. How can I contact you?" Edwina turned her head to look at Danitz. "He knows how." "Me? Soulfall ritual? Wait a minute, Captain, you mean I have to follow this man Gehrman Sparrow, during this period of time?" "No! Who knows when this fellow will go crazy?" With a start, Danitz quickly opened his mouth and said, "Captain, I've already left the Golden Dream for too long. I've missed too many lessons. I can't wait to return." He tried his hardest to show his sincerity in his eyes, filling them with the desire for knowledge. "I believe we can switch to someone else, like Iron Skin and Barrel." Before he finished his sentence, Edwina suddenly raised her right hand and pressed it against her ear. She looked slightly to the side and said without expression, "What did you say?" "I couldn't hear it. Roselle's dream spell is reaching its limits." The pirate admiral's skirt fluttered slightly as she took a step back before her figure quickly turned faint, reducing into points of fragmented light. The rest of Danitz's words were left stuck in his throat. He stretched out his right hand in an attempt to grasp something, but he ended up weakly drooping down. Roselle's dream spell? The Emperor's presence in the field of mysticism is also quite formidable. The full name of the Vice Admiral Iceberg is Edwina Edwards. Edwards. Isn't this the surname of one of the Emperor's 4 horsemen of the Apocalypse? A descendant? However, from the tone of Vice Admiral Iceberg, she isn't familiar with the eldest daughter of the Emperor, Bernadette. They might not even know each other. Klein looked at Danitz, whose expression had completely collapsed, and let out a soft laugh. "Perhaps one day I will call you Mr. 10,000 pounds. Danitz straightened his back in fright, then he saw Gehrman Sparrow's figure disappear from his dream. If I were only sequence 7 and had a bounty of 7 or 8,000 pounds, then I would be targeted everywhere I go. Danitz stood rooted in his dream, his head hurting the more he thought about it. In the evening, Danitz looked at Gehrman Sparrow, who was dressed as a native. Today, we'll be visiting the local faction. We might be able to find some good things there. They have a great need for beyonder ingredients, food, and weapons. At this point, Danitz looked Gehrman Sparrow up and down. It was rare for him to find something that he was better than him at. He said with a smile, "Their area is filled with local people. There aren't even many people with mixed blood. If there's even the slightest signs of an abnormality in their clothing, you will be discovered. Your pantaloons and brown jacket are fine, but you can't wear a shirt inside. A real native wears Taraba shirts. They're similar to Sisol shirts, but they're either all blue or white. They don't wear caps, headscarves, or anything. Also, people like you who look obviously Loanese will encounter very serious discrimination and hostility there, just like a wolf that sneaks into a flock of sheep. You can't hide your existence at all." Before he could finish, he saw Gehrman Sparrow tilt his head and look at him. His deep facial features quickly turned soft. His fair skin was instantly stained with the color of bronze. In just a snap, he had become an undeniable native that didn't stand out in any way. After a few seconds of silence, Danitz laughed dryly as if nothing had happened. "Me too. I have to disguise myself." "Your disguise?" Klein took off his cap and sat down. "What local faction? It actually trades beyonder ingredients, food, and weapons?" To put it simply, the Resistance. Danitz suddenly wasn't sure if Gehrman Sparrow had any connections with the lone officials. Klein was startled for a second. "Resistance?" Danitz smiled awkwardly and said, "People who clamor for independence and for natives to administer their local affairs. Their encampment is deep in the woods or at sea. They cooperate with many pirates and adventurers. Of course, the ones backing them are mainly people from Faysac and Intis. Often, there will be priests from the god of combat, and the eternal blazing sun secretly coming over. Byam isn't that calm after all." After leaving the kingdom and coming to the sea, Klein finally understood what it meant by an international situation. This wasn't something that could be compared to reading about wars in East Balam from the papers. He nodded slightly and didn't object to visiting the local faction. After leaving the Wind of Azurin, Klein followed Danitz, whose face was painted black. They went through the streets, heading all the way southeast. Leaving the confines of the City of Generosity, they entered a zone filled with different architectural styles. The buildings here had raised floors, propped up by wooden pilings. There were 3 or 4-story buildings that had evolved from the Lone-style terrace houses. The roads that split from each other were narrow and dirty, with many stalls on either side. They sold all kinds of headgear, earrings, and accessories made of stone. They were mostly bright red or multicolored. "What a bunch of strange fellows. They especially like bright colors, just like those venomous snakes in the forest," Danitz whispered. "As someone from Intis, you aren't much better either. You advocate the color of gold, and advocate a sense of luxury and exquisiteness, just like a nouveau riche," Klein lampooned. They passed by a group of dark-skinned, skinny, and shriveled natives, entering the alleys which had clothes drying over their heads. The scene before their eyes suddenly opened up, revealing a small municipal square. On the square, a group of locals was gathered around the central pond. Some were kneeling, some were prostrating, some were mumbling, and some were singing softly. They had devout expressions, but they looked numbed. As soon as they realized that someone was approaching, they quickly got up and ran into the surrounding alleys in a flurry. All the windows on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors of the surrounding houses clanged shut, and the square grew quiet, but Klein's spiritual perception told him that there were many people behind the windows, around the alleys, in the dark corners, watching these strangers who had suddenly arrived in their world. Danitz lowered his head and said in a suppressed voice, "Don't worry, this is their way of protecting themselves." "Oh?" Klein expressed his doubts. Danitz let out a chuckle. Before this place was completely colonized, the natives on the Rosted archipelago always believed in sea god Calvetua. They believed that this deity who appears in the form of a gigantic sea serpent would protect all the islands here, preventing them from being devoured by earthquakes or tsunamis. Now that this belief has been outlawed, the Church of the Lord of Storms has been constantly fighting against the heretics. Even the Church of Evernight and the Church of Steam and Machinery are unable to expand their influence here, and there are only a few cathedrals. But in fact, how can the faith that has been in place for centuries, if not a millennium, be so easily eradicated? There are still plenty of believers of the sea god in Biam, Blue Mountain Island, and the Roasted Sea. Even if a bunch of people are captured every 1 to 2 months, a situation in which they suffer all kinds of extreme punishment, it's impossible to reverse this situation anytime soon. The Resistance's main pillar of support are the believers of the sea god. In my opinion, it will take at least another 100 years before the faith of the sea god will be completely eradicated. Of course, that's under the premise that there aren't any other disruptive elements. Sea god Calvetua. Its image is of a gigantic sea serpent. As Klein listened thoughtfully, he followed Danitz into a 4-story house on the right. He went to the top floor via a narrow staircase. Knock! 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 Danitz knocked on the door to his left. Who is it? Someone asked in a low voice. Danitz replied with a chuckle. A friend who brings wine and barbecue. Where from? The person inside asked a strange question. Danitz stepped back. At sea. Creek. The door slowly opened and Klein saw a naked arm. The arm was tattooed with a blue, hideous sea serpent.